Lucca, 1899. A 21-year-old woman bleeds from her hands every Thursday at 8 in the evening. Every Friday, at 3 in the afternoon, the wounds vanish without a trace. Atheist doctors examine her. The church remains suspicious, and she asks for only one thing: to be left to suffer in silence. Italy, late 19th century. Scientific positivism proclaims that only what can be measured exists. Auguste Comte has declared the theological era dead. In universities, professors teach that miracles are superstitions of primitive minds. And in Rome, Pope Leo XIII governs a church under siege, stripped of its papal states, ridiculed by the liberal press as a relic of dark ages. In this world that has decreed the death of the supernatural, little Tuscany keeps a secret. In Lucca, a city of Renaissance walls and 100 churches, an orphan with neither fortune nor education is about to become the most rigorously documented mystical case of the modern era. Not because she seeks it, but because God chooses the most unlikely instruments to confound the wise. Gemma Galgani will leave no philosophical treatises nor found any congregations. Her only legacy will be her marked body and her letters written in trembling hand. But that legacy will be enough for doctors, theologians, and skeptics across 3 centuries to keep debating what happened in that house on Via del Seminario. Because what Gemma lived through does not admit easy explanations. It only admits one question: what if it were true? Gemma Galgani comes into the world on March 12, 1878, in Camigliano, a small village a few kilometers from Lucca. Her father, Enrico, runs a prosperous pharmacy. Her mother, Aurelia Landi, is a woman of deep faith who prays the rosary every night with her children. Gemma is the 5th of 8 siblings, a small girl with large eyes, who from a very young age shows a singular inclination toward the things of God. By 4 years old, she already knows the catechism by heart. At 5, she asks her mother to teach her how to do penance. Aurelia, somewhere between astonished and worried, tells her that the best penance for a little girl is obedience. Gemma will obey her entire life, even when obedience costs her tears of blood. At 7 years old, Gemma receives her first communion. In those days, the usual age for this sacrament was 12 or 13, but the Bishop of Lucca, Monsignor Nicolao Ghilardi, personally examines the child and is so impressed by her understanding of the Eucharist that he grants special permission. Years later, Gemma will remember that day as the moment when Jesus took possession of her soul. She writes in her autobiography, "From that morning on, I felt a hunger for God that nothing earthly could satisfy. Everything else seemed empty to me, tasteless, like ashes in my mouth. This hunger will accompany her until her final breath." But the luminous childhood shatters soon. In 1886, when Gemma is 8 years old, her older brother Gino enters the seminary. He is the pride of the family, a brilliant young man destined for the priesthood. But tuberculosis, that plague decimating 19th century Europe, settles into his lungs. For years, Gino fights against the disease while continuing his studies. Gemma prays for him every day, offers small sacrifices, asks the Virgin to heal him. In 1894, Gino dies without ever reaching the altar. He is 21 years old. Gemma, at 16, understands for the first time that God's love does not protect from pain, but rather gives meaning to pain. Gino's death is only the first blow. That same year, Aurelia, their mother, also succumbs to tuberculosis. Gemma cares for her until the end, holds her hand as she exhales her last breath, closes her eyes. Now it is she, a 16-year-old girl, who must take care of the house and her younger siblings. She does it without complaint, cooking, cleaning, mending clothes, watching over the little ones when they fall ill. But at night, when everyone is asleep, Gemma kneels before the crucifix in her room and weeps. She does not weep from despair, but from longing. She writes, "Mother left me orphaned of her presence, but she left me heir to her faith. I understood that Jesus was stripping me of everything to have me only for himself." Enrico Galgani, the father, cannot withstand the blows. The death of his wife and son plunges him into a melancholy that affects his business. The pharmacy declines. Debts pile up. In 1897, 3 years after Aurelia, Enrico dies, leaving his children in utter destitution. Creditors descend upon the house like vultures. They take the furniture, the books, the clothes, even the keepsakes. The Galgani siblings are scattered among relatives who take them in more out of obligation than charity. Gemma is sent to an aunt's house where she is treated like a servant. She sleeps in a freezing room, eats leftovers, works from sunrise to sunset. When she makes the slightest mistake, she receives reproaches and humiliations, and she remains silent. Not from weakness, but from conviction. In a later letter, she will write, "Jesus was despised, and I deserved to be far more than he. Every insult was a caress from heaven." In the midst of this desolation, Gemma discovers a book that will transform her life. The biography of Gabriel of Our Lady of Sorrows, a young Passionist who died at 24, whose cause for beatification is in process. Gabriel had been a cheerful young man, even worldly, who after a radical conversion embraced the most austere religious life. He died consumed by tuberculosis, yet radiant with joy, repeating, "How beautiful it is to die." Gemma reads and rereads those pages until she memorizes them. She recognizes in Gabriel a kindred soul, someone who understood that suffering accepted out of love becomes an offering. She begins to pray to him every night, to ask him to intercede for her, to feel his presence near like that of an older brother in heaven. She does not yet know that Gabriel will be the instrument of her miraculous healing. She does not know that one day their relics will rest together in the same sanctuary. She only knows that she has found a model and a friend. The year 1898 marks the descent into the abyss. Gemma, who has just turned 20, is struck down by an illness that doctors cannot diagnose with precision. Spinal meningitis, some say. Bone tuberculosis, others claim. Perhaps a tumor on the spine, the most pessimistic suggest. What is certain is that the young woman is left bedridden, paralyzed from the waist down, with purulent abscesses that ooze from her head and tear out clumps of her hair. Deafness invades her left ear. The pain is so excruciating she can barely suppress her screams. The doctors of Lucca apply the treatments of the era, cauterizations with red-hot iron, bloodlettings that leave her drained, plasters that burn the skin. Nothing works. Dr. Fanner, who attends her with dedication, eventually confesses to the family that there is no hope. Science has exhausted its resources. All that remains is to wait for death. But Gemma does not wait for death. She waits for God. From her bed of pain, she intensifies her prayer with a determination that astonishes those around her. She asks them to bring her an image of Gabriel of Our Lady of Sorrows, that young Passionist whose life she had devoured in better times. She places it beside her pillow and begins a fervent novena, pleading for his intercession. She does not ask for healing for herself, but rather to be able to serve God in religious life. Her only longing is to wear the habit of the Passionist sisters, to consecrate her existence to the contemplation of Christ's passion. If God heals her, it will be to give herself completely. If God takes her, it will be to meet him face to face. Either way, she wins. This logic of love bewilders the materialist doctors who observe her. How can a dying woman radiate such peace? The night of February 23, 1899, changes everything. Gemma is alone in her room, immersed in prayer, when she feels a presence. She does not see it with the eyes of her body, but she perceives it with a certainty stronger than any sensory evidence. It is Gabriel of Our Lady of Sorrows, dressed in the black habit of the Passionists, smiling at her with infinite tenderness. He tells her that her prayer has been heard, that Jesus wants her healed for a special mission, that she must prepare herself to suffer in a new way. Gemma does not understand these last words, but she nods. Then she feels as if an invisible force courses through her destroyed body. The pain disappears. The paralysis yields. The abscesses close instantly, leaving no trace. Gemma sits up in bed, moves her legs, stands up. She walks to the window and gazes at the starry night over Lucca. She is healed, completely healed. Dr. Fanner, summoned urgently, examines his patient with disbelief. He searches for explanations, reviews his notes, repeats the tests. He finds no natural cause. In the canonization process, he will declare under oath, "The healing of Gemma Galgani escapes all known medical explanation. If you ask my scientific opinion, I must answer that I have none." The healing is not an ending, but a beginning. Gemma understands that she has been healed for something, though she does not yet know what. Her first impulse is to fulfill her vow, to enter the Passionist Sisters. She writes to the superior of the monastery in Tarquinia, sets forth her vocation, begs to be admitted. The response arrives weeks later and is a devastating blow. The Passionists reject her. Her medical history makes her a risky candidate. Moreover, she lacks a dowry, that financial contribution families traditionally gave when a daughter entered the convent. Without guaranteed health and without money, Gemma has no place in the cloister. She reads the rejection letter once, twice, 3 times. Then she kneels and says, "Jesus, if you do not want me there, it is because you want me somewhere else. Thy will be done." There is no bitterness in her words, only surrender. This surrender will be her school of holiness during the 4 years she has left to live. God has closed the convent door to open another door for her, a much narrower one. That of spousal mysticism, that of the stigmata, that of bloodless martyrdom which will configure her totally with the crucified Christ. Gemma does not know it yet, but she is about to discover it. On June 8, 1899, the eve of the Solemnity of the Sacred Heart of Jesus, Gemma finds herself praying in her room when the visible world fades away. She sees the Blessed Virgin accompanied by her guardian angel, that luminous presence who has been with her since childhood and with whom she converses as with an intimate friend. Mary shows her the wounds of her son and asks if she is willing to share in his sufferings. Gemma answers yes, that she desires it with all her being. Then she feels a fire piercing through her hands, her feet, her left side. The pain is indescribable, yet it comes accompanied by a supernatural sweetness that makes it bearable. When the ecstasy ends, Gemma discovers that her hands are bleeding from both sides, that her feet bear identical wounds, that her left side shows a gash several centimeters long. The stigmata have appeared. She is 21 years old, and her life has just changed forever. What is extraordinary about Gemma's stigmata is not only their existence, but their mathematical regularity. Every Thursday, around 8 in the evening, the wounds begin to open, coinciding with the hour when Jesus instituted the Eucharist. Throughout the night from Thursday to Friday, Gemma enters ecstasy and relives the mysteries of the Passion, the agony in Gethsemane, the scourging, the crowning with thorns, the way of Calvary, the crucifixion. Her body physically reproduces each torment. Those who observe her see how her face contorts in pain, how her hands clench, how blood flows abundantly from the 5 wounds. On Friday at 3 in the afternoon, the hour of Christ's death, the wounds stop bleeding. And most astonishing of all, by Saturday morning, they have completely disappeared without leaving any scar. This cycle will repeat for more than 2 years with a precision that defies all psychological or physiological explanation. Dr. Fanner, who had already certified her miraculous healing, examines the wounds on multiple occasions. He confirms that they pass completely through the tissue of her hands, that the blood is authentic, that there is no possibility of self-injury or fraud. Other physicians, some openly hostile to the faith, reach identical conclusions. Science can describe the phenomenon, but it cannot explain it. The Giannini family enters Gemma's life providentially. Matteo Giannini is a respected businessman in Lucca. His wife Cecilia, a woman of deep faith who has heard about the young stigmatist and feels compelled to meet her. When she discovers the circumstances in which Gemma lives, mistreated by relatives who consider her a burden or a disgrace, Cecilia does not hesitate. She invites her to live in their home on Via del Seminario. Gemma accepts on the condition that she not be treated as an honored guest, but as one more member of the family. And so it will be. For the next 3 years, Gemma will share the daily life of the Gianninis. She will help Cecilia in the kitchen, care for the couple's 11 children, mend clothes, scrub floors. The children adore her because she plays with them, tells them stories, teaches them to pray with contagious joy. No one who sees her during the day would suspect that at night, this simple young woman becomes the stage for wonders that escape all human understanding. But the Giannini home is not only a refuge, it is also an observatory. Cecilia, a practical woman with a clear mind, begins keeping a meticulous diary of everything she witnesses. She notes the dates, the times, the details of each ecstasy. She describes the conversations Gemma holds aloud with her guardian angel, conversations she can hear but whose invisible interlocutor she cannot see. She records the phenomena of levitation, when Gemma's body rises from the ground during prayer and remains suspended for minutes that seem eternal. She also documents the demonic attacks, those terrible nights when Gemma is beaten by invisible forces, spat upon, dragged across the floor, while she screams invoking the name of Jesus. In the morning, her body shows bruises and wounds that no human being has inflicted. This diary of Cecilia Giannini will become a fundamental document in the canonization process, first-hand testimony from a balanced woman who simply recounts what she saw without embellishment or interpretation. The truth, sometimes, is stranger than any fiction. Father Germano di San Stanislao, a Passionist, assumes the spiritual direction of Gemma and applies a rigorous method of discernment that today we would call scientific. He orders Gemma to write a complete autobiography, omitting nothing, no matter how shameful or extraordinary it may seem. He subjects her to tests of obedience designed to detect any trace of spiritual pride or self-deception. He forbids her to speak of her experiences with anyone except him. He orders her to resist the ecstasies when possible, to verify whether they are under her voluntary control. Gemma always obeys, even when the orders cause her suffering. This blind obedience convinces Father Germano more than any supernatural phenomenon. A soul that obeys like this, he reasons, cannot be deceived by the devil, because the devil is essentially disobedient. The writings Gemma produces under this direction reveal a mystical theology of astonishing depth. She speaks of the Trinity with Thomistic precision, describes the Eucharist with seraphic ardor, explains the redemptive value of suffering with a clarity that theologians trained in universities do not always achieve. Where does this young woman without formal education get such wisdom? Father Germano finds only one answer: from the interior master who instructs her in the silence of prayer. The year 1902 brings with it the prelude to the end. Tuberculosis, that disease Gemma believed conquered after her miraculous healing, returns with relentless ferocity. The doctors who examine her confirm the inevitable. Both lungs are devastated, transformed into necrotic tissue that barely allows air to pass through. Each breath is a battle, each word a Herculean effort. But Gemma does not complain. When Cecilia Giannini asks how she is feeling, she responds with a disarming smile. "I am where Jesus wants me. What more could I ask for?" The following months are a slow descent toward death that she transforms into an ascent toward God. While her body wastes away, her spirit expands. The letters she dictates to Father Germano during this final period reach peaks of mystical depth that astonish all who read them. She writes about the mystery of the Holy Trinity with a theological precision that would make doctors of the Sorbonne pale. She describes her conversations with the crucified Jesus with an intimacy reminiscent of Saint Catherine of Siena. She explains the purifying value of purgatory with a certainty that can only come from one who has glimpsed otherworldly realities. Where does this dying young woman, with no more education than the catechism learned as a child, draw such wisdom from? The theologians who will examine her writings during the canonization process will find no other explanation than the direct infusion of the Holy Spirit. Holy Week of 1903 begins with omens of consummation. Gemma, who can barely sit up in bed anymore, asks to be moved to a smaller room, more austere, more like a monastic cell. She wants to die as she would have lived if the Passionists had accepted her, in poverty, in silence, in solitude with her crucified spouse. On Holy Thursday, while the churches of Lucca celebrate the institution of the Eucharist, Gemma enters an ecstasy that will last all night. But this ecstasy is different from all the previous ones. It is more intense, more prolonged, more terrible. Cecilia Giannini, keeping vigil beside her, watches in horror as the young woman's body reproduces every torment of the Passion with chilling realism. She sees marks of scourging appear on her back, as if invisible whips were lashing her. She sees blood spring from her forehead, tracing the crown of thorns that no human hand has woven. She sees how her hands and feet bleed copiously, opened by nails that only the eyes of faith can perceive. Gemma moans, trembles, begs forgiveness for sins she has not committed, offers her pain for sinners who do not know they are lost. The night becomes endless. When the dawn of Good Friday breaks, the young woman remains plunged in that abyss of redemptive suffering. Good Friday of 1903 is the longest day of Gemma Galgani's life. At noon, coinciding with the hour when Jesus was nailed to the cross, her body becomes completely rigid. Her eyes close. Her breathing becomes almost imperceptible. The Gianninis, terrified, believe she has died. But no, she is living the 3 hours of Christ's agony on Calvary with such absolute identification that her own life is suspended. For exactly 3 hours, from 12 noon to 3 in the afternoon, Gemma remains motionless like a corpse, while her soul accompanies Jesus in the supreme sacrifice. At 3 o'clock sharp, the hour of the Redeemer's death, a shudder runs through her body. She opens her eyes. She looks at those surrounding her with an expression of supernatural peace and whispers, "Consummatum est." It is finished. Then she asks forgiveness for the trouble she has caused, as if reliving Christ's passion were an impertinence requiring apologies. This disarming humility is perhaps the greatest miracle of her life. After touching the most dizzying heights of mysticism, she still considers herself the least of all creatures. The days following Good Friday are ones of luminous serenity. Gemma knows the end is near and awaits it as a bride awaits her wedding day. But she still has one final trial left, the most painful of all: the deprivation of the Eucharist. A scrupulous confessor, fearful that the ecstasies Gemma experiences during communion might cause scandal or be misinterpreted, forbids her from receiving the sacrament. It is an order that pierces Gemma's heart like a sword. She, who lives on the Eucharist as the body lives on bread, finds herself deprived of the only nourishment she truly craves. She could protest, she could appeal to higher authorities, she could argue that the prohibition is unjust. But she does not. She obeys. She obeys while weeping in silence. She obeys while offering that deprivation for the conversion of lukewarm priests. She obeys while repeating the words of Job: "The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord." This heroic obedience in what hurts her most is the definitive proof of her sanctity. Only in her final days, when death is already imminent, is the prohibition lifted, and Gemma can receive for the last time the one she has loved above all things. The viaticum is administered to her on Easter Thursday. She receives it with tears of gratitude, whispering, "Now I can die. Now I have everything I need." Holy Saturday of 1903 dawns over Lucca with a stillness that foretells the eternal. In the room where Gemma lies, the April light enters timidly through the window, illuminating a face consumed by illness, yet transfigured by a peace that is not of this world. The Gianninis keep vigil beside her, aware that the hours are running out. Father Germano has been urgently summoned from Rome, but the train will not arrive in time. Gemma knows this and remains untroubled. She has lived her entire life in obedience, and she will die the same way, abandoned into the hands of God, demanding nothing, holding on to nothing. At 11 in the morning, her breathing becomes slower, more spaced, as if each breath were a farewell. Cecilia Giannini holds her hand and feels the life force withdrawing from that martyred body. Then, with a clarity that surprises everyone present, Gemma opens her eyes and speaks her final words. "Now it is truly certain that nothing separates me from Jesus anymore. I am going." At 11:15 in the morning, her soul leaves the prison of flesh that has suffered so much and flies toward the bridegroom who has courted her with crosses. She is 25 years, 2 months, and 29 days old. She has died on the most silent day of the liturgical year, when Christ lies in the tomb and the world holds its breath, awaiting the resurrection. It is as if God wanted his little bride to accompany him in that final rest before glory. News of Gemma's death spreads through Lucca with the speed of the wind. Before evening falls, hundreds of people crowd in front of the Giannini house, asking to see the body. What they find leaves them speechless. Gemma's corpse shows none of the usual signs of death. There is no rigidity, no cadaveric pallor, not the slightest hint of decomposition. Her face radiates a serene beauty she never possessed in life, as if death had erased the traces of suffering and revealed the splendor of her soul. For days, the body remains exposed for the veneration of the faithful, and for days, it maintains that flexibility and freshness that defy the laws of nature. The doctors who examine it find no explanation. The skeptics fall silent. The devoted kneel and pray. Lucca, the city of 100 churches, has found a new patroness, though it does not yet know it officially. The beatification process opens in 1917, barely 14 years after her death, an unusual swiftness that reflects the Church's urgency to examine that extraordinary case. Testimonies accumulate. Doctors who certified inexplicable phenomena, priests who heard her confessions, the Gianninis who lived with her, simple faithful who witnessed her ecstasies or received graces through her intercession. Father Germano, who has dedicated the years following Gemma's death to compiling her writings and promoting her cause, declares before the ecclesiastical tribunal, "In 30 years of ministry, I have not known a soul more transparent, more obedient, more configured to Christ crucified. If Gemma is not a saint, I do not know what sanctity is." Pope Pius XI solemnly beatifies her on May 2, 1933, declaring that her heroic virtues are proven beyond all reasonable doubt. 7 years later, in the midst of World War II, when bombs fall on Europe and civilization seems to be crumbling, Pope Pius XII raises her to the altars as a saint of the Universal Church. It is May 2, 1940. The pontiff calls her beloved daughter of the Passion and proposes her life as a model for a world that has forgotten the redemptive value of suffering. Today, the incorrupt body of Saint Gemma Galgani rests in the Passionist sanctuary of Lucca, alongside the relics of Saint Gabriel of Our Lady of Sorrows, that young man whose intercession miraculously healed her. Pilgrims who visit her tomb encounter a living presence that transcends death. Her writings have been translated into dozens of languages and are studied in theology faculties as supreme examples of nuptial mysticism, that tradition which sees in the human soul the bride of Christ and in suffering, accepted out of love, the nuptial bed where union is consummated. Theologians of the stature of Hans Urs von Balthasar have placed her in the lineage of Saint Catherine of Siena and Saint Teresa of Avila, women who received extraordinary graces from God not for their own glory, but to remind the Church that the supernatural has not died, that heaven remains open, that Christ continues to choose weak souls to confound the strong. But perhaps Gemma's deepest legacy lies not in the stigmata, nor in the ecstasies, nor in the levitations. It lies in the ordinariness of her sanctity, in the patience with which she endured humiliations, in the joy with which she served others, in the obedience with which she accepted even orders that broke her heart, in the forgiveness she offered to those who mistreated her. In an era that sought scientific explanations for everything, Gemma offered something that science cannot measure or refute: a life totally surrendered to God, documented down to the last detail, verified by hostile and favorable witnesses alike, and which continues to challenge anyone who approaches her with honesty. Her silent question crosses the centuries and reaches us today. Are you willing to love like this? Are you willing to suffer like this? Are you willing to trust like this? 25 years, a life that had barely begun according to the world's standards, but which in God's eyes had reached a fullness that many centenarians never know. Gemma did not found hospitals, nor write encyclopedias, nor preach before crowds. Her pulpit was a sick bed. Her eloquence, the silence of accepted suffering. Her masterpiece, a wounded body that spoke louder than all the treatises of theology. In our age, which flees from pain as from the plague, which numbs every discomfort and considers suffering a meaningless absurdity, Gemma remains both scandal and light. A scandal for those who believe happiness consists in avoiding the cross. a light for those who sense there is a love greater than pleasure, a joy deeper than comfort, a life more abundant than the mere absence of death. Perhaps today, in the silence of your heart, you can hear the same question Jesus asked so many times of his little bride from Luca. Do you love me? And perhaps you can answer, even with a trembling voice, what she answered until her final breath. Yes, Lord, I love you. Teach me to love you more. Saint Gemma Galgani, Virgin and Mystic, Flower of the Passion, pray for us.